Eugene Katchalov has excelled at every single stake and buy-in of poker that he's played in his entire life, including $100,000 buy-ins and 1,500, 3,000 limit mixed games in Bobby's room. He's one of the greatest minds that poker's ever seen. And so, without any further ado, I bring to you my conversation with Eugene Katchalov. Eugene, good morning, my friend. How you doing?
Hey Brad, good. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great having you here. It's great having you here. You know,
Thank
you've
you.
been a staple in the world of poker for quite a long time. And tell me, I guess we're going to get into your story about your journey through the world of poker, but what's led this re-entry back into the space after being gone for a little while?
Yeah, I mean my journey started in like '03, and then I guess I left kind of like the poker world around 2016, 2017 or so, full time. And then like I was like part-time involved for another like a year or two, and then I kind of completely quit just because I was busy with a couple of startups that I started with my friend and partner Luca Pagano. And now I'm coming back just because I'm kind of involved in a new project that's going to be dealing with poker. So I wanted to come back, and I kind of miss poker. I'll put it this way: I don't miss playing poker professionally. I don't ever want to do that again. I don't, but I do love playing. I love competing for the sake of competing, just to kind of have fun with it, and like as a recreational who's like competing and trying his best. Like that's the kind of poker I love. Like competing in a professional level, like that's great and all, but I don't know. I don't know if I have it in me to do it like in a way where I'm like trying to make earn a living from it. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Well, hopefully your startups have worked out. And by the way, I see we have some connection issue. Believe it or not, I went out of my way to change services so that we would have a good connection and high quality video and audio. And now, this is how the poker gods are punishing me. So while you're watching this, recognize that I have no earthly idea why it looks like to me Eugene is pixelated and fading into nothingness. But hopefully
Oh,
it
that's
gets
the way you got
resolved.
you. Yeah, your picture quality went down a little bit, but it's all right. That's probably just the way
Yeah.
it's meant to be. That's the way the universe wills it. So let's just deal with it. No
Yeah,
problem.
we're gonna deal with it. It's funny from your side. I'm all pixelated. From mine, you are. Maybe somehow it'll work out for both of us in the end product. I don't know.
Shoot. Okay. All right.
Um,
I mean, I could see you well. It just the quality just went down a little bit, but I could see you well.
Perfect. Cool. Um, so you mentioned you don't have it in you, which means that you recognize what it takes to play
Yeah.
at a very high level consistently over time, right? So let's talk about your journey and entering the world of poker and ramping up to being able to play the game consistently at an exceptional level like you have. So tell me,
Yeah. I mean,
how'd that journey start?
my poker journey started in 2003. I was graduating college, and kind of like like a lot of people started. My friends invited me to a poker game. I went, I played. It was a lot of fun. I still didn't even understand the rules towards the end of the game. That first session, but I really enjoyed it. I started watching poker. I think that was like the when Chris Moneymaker won. Like that the whole kind of boom was starting up. So we started gathering together with friends on a weekly basis, playing. Then I learned that my friend's brother was playing online. I was like, oh wow, there's something, there's online poker, and I was like, all right. So I tried that out. I think party poker was pretty big at that point, and
The
I
biggest.
deposited, yeah, the biggest, and I deposited a little bit of money, and I, after a while, I was playing like $5 sit and goes. I remember, and I was doing quite well in those, and I was able to make whatever, I don't know, 30, $40 a day, and living with my parents at the time, like it was cool. It was like, oh, this is pretty nice, like enough to go
Sure.
to the movies or just to go out with friends or whatever. It was great. Um, so I kept on playing. I really enjoyed it, and then about a year later, I made out my. I think it was my first time that I went. I took a trip. But before that, I also started. I grew up in New York. I was playing in some underground New York games in Manhattan, and then and then
How
about
was
a
that
year
scene?
later,
How was that scene back in the day?
that was huge. It was really good. There were a couple of big clubs in New York, a couple of famous clubs. It was massive. It was always like overpacked. They had great games, cash games and tournaments all the time. It was great. It was a lot of fun. Like the club I spent the most time in was, I remember, it was called Ace Point. Um, and yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah, that's great.
Um,
I've heard a lot of stories about the underground New York games. I think the Mayfair was that one.
yeah, that was
Or
probably
different.
before. That was before my time. That's
Like the
probably like,
'90s.
I think that's like Eric Seidel's time,
Yeah, yeah,
more.
yeah.
I was a bit after that. Um, but I was coming up with like, then I remember I became friends with Nick Schulman, and he was playing in those games a lot, and we kind of became close.
The
And then I made
takeover.
my first, yeah, the takeover, exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He was specializing in like limit hold'em in those days.
Everybody was. No,
Uh,
like there was that. I think that's something that people forget. Like when the early 2000s, there was really not much no limit. It was mostly
yeah,
limit. If you wanted to play no limit, it was like tournaments or sit and goes, but not really cash.
yeah, that's true. It was limit, and the cash that was, it wasn't actually in the limit. It was pot limit hold'em.
Oh
That was a
wow.
popular game. In those days. Yeah, it's like I feel like a dinosaur talking about it now. But like that was the game. I remember my first experience in traveling for poker again. I didn't even play, but I just went with a couple of friends. I went to Commerce Casino in LA. Um, and I went with a friend of mine and his dad, and his dad was a pretty wealthy guy, but like he didn't play poker, but he just learned the rules. But he was a very good gambler. He was like a very good card player in general.
Hmm.
And my first memory was like he sat down to play a cash game at the Commerce Casino. It was a 10-20 pot limit hold'em game. It
Holy
was like
cow. Yeah.
it was the
That's a big
largest
deal.
game. Yeah, it was a big game. By that time, I was watching a bit of poker. Like the World Poker Tour was big, um, and he sits down and at the game, and Antonio Sfandiari was in the game, and I was like, oh wow, I know this guy from TV. Like that's so cool. So he sits down to play. So my friend's dad sits down to play. Maybe they're playing a 5 or 6 handed or whatever. Um, and maybe he sits down. Everybody was playing really deep too. Like they might have had like 10,000 in front of them, like 10K, and like Antonio had like 10K. And I remember, and my friend's dad, he was like obviously like it was obvious to everyone that he was very new, so he was like the fish in the game. But
Yeah.
because he's so skilled, like as a gambler, he has this like he has this like tendency, kind of like Gus. He's like instead of being like passive, he's actually overly aggressive, right? Like as a new player.
Hmm.
But he learns quick. He picks up quick. So just in a few hours, he kind of picked up the game, and he actually busted Antonio in that game for
Yeah.
like 10K. And like it was very memorable, and Antonio was like distraught because he said he later on would go on to say like that was like literally like half of his bankroll, like his whole
Oh
bankroll,
wow.
or like a
Really?
third, or maybe like a third. Yeah, it was like huge. It was like a huge part of his bankroll.
Wow.
Um, and then a few days later, the LAPT, I think it was called the LAPT, the classic,
Yep.
was starting up, like the 10K buy-in, and Antonio plays that and goes on to win it. And he's, like that was like the first big event I think like he won or something like that. It was like he won like
Yeah.
2 million or whatever, and we were all in the audience, and then I think he even told my friend's dad that it's because of you. Like you destroyed me so much at the cash game. Like I really needed to win this. Like I needed to do it. It's like he gave some
Wow. That's a
credit
great story.
for
Yeah.
that session. That was like very memorable as like my first kind of poker excursion. Even though I didn't play myself, I didn't have much of a bankroll back then. Um, and then a few months later is like we came back to New
I just
York, and my first. Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
I just want to take a second to talk about Antonio Esfandiari's
Sure.
bankroll management back in the day, right? He loses 10K, which is a third of his bankroll. So what does he do? He plays a 10K tournament like a
Yeah.
couple days later,
Yeah.
right? Like just no
Yeah.
big deal.
Time to get even. Yeah.
Time to get
From a tournament, of
right.
all things.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. It just struck me as
Yeah, no
funny that
problem.
yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
So you went back
So
to
then
New York.
I went home. Obviously I was like fired up. I was like, wow, poker's so cool. I hope I can have enough money to actually like play games like this at some point, in my future. Um, and then I ended up like my first actual like poker trip. I think it was to Las Vegas. It was 2004, and I went. I think it was in the fall. I don't remember exactly, but sometime in 2004, I went to play in Las Vegas, and I was playing cash games. I was like focusing on cash games at the time, and I remember I had like couple. I had like 5 days of like I was playing. I think like 2-5 at the time. No limit. And 5 days straight, I won like $1,000 each day, and I was like exhilarated because it was like huge for me. Like
Sure.
my whole bankroll was maybe like 5,000, and here I was like winning. I won like 5,000, and a friend of mine goes, "Oh, there was actually like a poker series at the time, and he was like, there's gonna be a 3K buy-in tournament." I was like, "Go play it." I was like, "No, it's too much for me. Like I can't risk 3,000." He's like, "I'll
Yeah.
just take half of you. Just go play it." I was like, "All right, let's I'm up. Let's risk it." So I go play it, and and it was like I don't know, it was maybe like 400 or 500 players or something, and I make the final table, and I end up finishing fifth for like 45K, I think, which was just absolutely massive. And like first place was like 300K, and it was like I was like so close to it. I was like just like life changing money, and I was like, oh my god, this is like incredible, like just huge boost to my bankroll. And then he's like, oh, now you got to go play like the main event. It was like a 15K buy, and I was like, there's no way. I was like, I can't. He's like, just go risk 5K. Me and my dad will take the other thirds of you. So I risked like 5K, and I made the money. So like I doubled my money there too, and I got to
Yeah.
play with Phil Hellmuth. I remember that was the first time I met Phil Hellmuth. It was like this very memorable trip, and then like I come home and I'm like, now I have like this bankroll of like whatever 20-30K or whatever. And I was like, obviously like I really started enjoying tournaments by that time, and that's kind of how I started to kick things off. And then I started having some online success. I won like a Sunday Million on Full Tilt. And then I would go to Vegas a lot, and my real breakthrough came in 2007 was when I won the Doyle Brunson Classic for 2.5 million.
Whew.
And yeah,
Quite the
and
three
thank then
year quite the 3 year journey from or actually I guess like a four year journey from $5 sit and goes on party poker to
yeah,
winning 2 mil in Vegas at the Doyle Brunson Classic.
yeah, it was huge. It was obviously huge for me. It opened up a lot of doors for me.
Tell me
And
about
but
how it felt. Like just the feeling
mm,
of, you
yeah.
know, just winning $1,000 a day for 5 days straight, feeling insane, to just a few years later winning $2 million, and I mean that just had to be I
Is
can't even imagine.
unbelievable. Honestly, it's like a high that like I feel like you're always chasing in poker afterwards, but I think you can only really get it once. I the only way like the way I remember it now is like for 3 weeks following that I was like on cloud nine. I was just like it's just in a great mood, just incredible. It was just life changing, obviously, and then
Sure.
obviously it kind of dissipated as it kind of became the norm. But then you're always kind of chasing it. You're always like that that high. But obviously, yeah, it was life changing for me. In in many different ways.
What were
So
you doing to, continue to progress and get better on like a regular basis back then? There were much fewer tools, and clearly if you had gone from playing $5 sit and goes to, winning $2 million over 4 or 5 years and being more active in playing the bigger buy-in tournaments, you had significantly progressed as a poker player. Was it like 2+2 forums? Was it social circle friends discussing? Was it deep thinking?
I was not part of 2+2. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't really use it. Honestly, I spent a lot of time just. I remember spending a lot of time with Nick, just Nick Schulman. I guess he was
Oh
he was
yeah,
my
I
best
guess
friend at the
that's
time.
a good
So
resource.
we,
Yeah.
yeah, so we bounced a lot of ideas back and forth between one another. Another way I learned. I mean, I just loved the game. There was no resources like there are today, obviously, to learn. But the way I learned, besides talking with friends, was I love to watch like top players play. So I would just like watch them play, whether it's on TV or online, and I would just like look at what they're doing, and I would just like anytime I would see something unusual, I was like, oh, well, what's the reason behind that? And then I was like,
Mm.
what could be the reason? I was like, oh, interesting, maybe that's the reason. And I would just like always experiment in my own game, and I would kind of figure new things out, that way. Um, and then
Love that.
and then at some point, I kind of fell on this wave where I felt like I understood the way the average player thought about the game, and it was kind of easy for me to trick them. It was just like easy for me to. It felt easy for me to play counter
Get
to what they thought.
Yeah,
So
get inside their
I
head.
played I played a kind of like a really exploitative style that worked really well for me for a long time, and I
Nice.
really
It
enjoyed
still
that.
does.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it still does, and we can get into that later. But I
Sure.
think yeah, I think to some degree it went away with all these tools today, but it still does. Um, and then so yeah, it's just kind of moving forward. From then on, I started playing. I was also I didn't play just No Limit Hold'em. I played a lot of games. Also with Nick, obviously, because he was a mixed game player. I played a lot of Limit Hold'em. I played a lot of Limit Omaha 8 or better. Then I fell in love with like Horse, like the stud games and Triple Draw. And eventually I was playing like the highest mixed games on PokerStars. I think it was like 4,800 at the
Ooh,
time.
yeah.
And I would play in Vegas and Atlantic City. In Vegas, I played as high as like 1,500, 3,000. So I played some really really big games in Bobby's room, and I always enjoyed mixed games. And then in like 2011, I
Tell me about
remember,
that.
yeah.
Playing big, like 400, 800, playing
Mhm.
1,500, 3,000. These are ginormous stakes by anyone's measure. Um, the feeling of competing for that much money, and do you feel like it's something that you kind of slowly build up to over time? Do you feel like it's something kind of innate, that tolerance for risk to play that big? What do you think it was?
Um, I think I have this inherent optimism about me, that makes me kind of believe in myself and just kind of uh, you know, go further in terms of risk taking. But I wouldn't say that's all positive. Like I would say, because that's also hurt me in sometimes because I guess I'm sometimes like overly optimistic. So it's kind of led to sometimes me taking more risk than I should in certain spots. Um, but I, I think I just and something my dad taught me early on was like try not to think about the money when you're playing. Just think of it as chips and just make the best decision you can. And, like, don't think about the money. So I always try to take that approach too. I always just really just try to make the best decision game wise and without thinking about the money so much. Um, and it seemed to work out. I love the game. I was just like obsessing and just spending a lot of time with it.
I have another follow up, but first, I
Mhm.
just want to talk about optimism and how there's a lot of research, and if you think about it logically, optimism is way more beneficial for you as a human being than pessimism or cynicism, because
Absolutely.
optimism gives you a chance, as you said, right? Like sometimes it's worked against you, but what happens is because you're willing to try things and you don't have that pessimistic framework of like, oh, if I'm not going to do that because I'm just going to fail or it's going to end terribly. You learn. You're able to upgrade how you think, how you understand yourself, what you're capable of, and I think that those lessons over time accumulate, build up, and really help you become the best version of yourself. Because you must fail in order to learn. You must fail in order to
Yeah.
grow. And the cynic who doesn't take risks or doesn't take chances never learns. So it really stunts their growth over time. Um, and the follow up question was, as someone who's actively and also interested in all the forms of poker, right? Like I think I love trying to figure out like how the game works and then how all the other games work. I've learned that there are things that you can take away from the other games to apply to, say, your main game of No Limit Hold'em. Was
Yeah.
that the case for you, that learning how to play these other games actually helped you improve at, say, No Limit tournaments, for instance?
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I clearly remember instances like that where other games would help me kind of clarify certain, I don't know, positions in other games. I don't know how can I explain it. Um, I mean, like a simple example is like the difference between limit hold'em and no limit hold'em. Like in no limit
Sure.
hold'em, you don't get you don't get the showdown very often, right? Like in limit hold'em, you do get the showdown very often, and limit hold'em can show you just how hard how hard it is to actually make a hand and how rare big hands are. So
And the value
even
of
something like
making it the
that,
showdown.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the value, yeah, exactly. And like in things like pot odds, right? Like limit hold'em. I mean, you're always getting really good pot odds, but still, it just teaches you a lot of things.
I
Um,
I think for limit hold'em, for me, like it really taught me how to realize equity and how like
Mm,
valuable it is for my hand to see a showdown, like when I have a bluff catcher, and to try to think creatively as to how to get the showdown cheaply so that I can see whether or not my hand wins or not instead of folding out my equity. I think that's like the big one of the biggest takeaways that I had from limit hold'em is like, oh, like how do I leverage positional advantage in such a way where like, maybe I have a big range advantage with like a bluff catcher, right? Like so ace high board, I've got like kings. I
mm.
three bet pre and I'm in position, like maybe small check makes a lot of sense because like maybe I can get called by worse, but also like if I check and then face like bets downstream, I don't get to realize the equity with my kings. And because I have a range advantage, I'm probably not going to get check raised very often. So like essentially trying to make it to showdown for the absolute minimum just became a much higher priority if that makes sense.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is it also teaches you to kind of think about the opponent as well. Like some opponents, for example, like in the example that you gave, when you have two kings and you raise and the ace high board comes and you check behind, like the good opponents will just always assume you never have a hand that's just giving up. Like you're
Sure.
always kind of either pot controlling or slow playing an ace. So, which means that they're never bluffing into you with a no equity hand in the turn, right?
Right.
So, in that sense, it's like it's almost better to just like c bet versus them your whole range because they're also not going to like check raise you with nothing like with complete air, just
Or
because you
even
have a
like
lot of
ace
ace
jack,
x in
ace
your hand.
10, right? They just can't because you have like ace
Yeah,
king and sets of aces and that sort of
exactly.
thing.
Whereas if you're facing a bad, basically a recreational opponent, right? Like they perceive your check in a completely different way.
Sure.
A lot of recreational players are just very basic. Like if you check, you're weak. If you bet, you're strong. So versus them, of
Right.
course, you want to check because like the board is like
And
ace
then
seven five, turn deuce, and they're just betting with like jack 10, like just like a no equity hand just because you checked, like something that
exactly.
you don't really see very often. So limit hold'em, you go through those kinds of uh, positions so often that it kind of teaches you to kind of adjust to who you're playing and think about, do you want to see bet versus this player, and who you want to see bet and who you don't. And then
Right.
that obviously also carries over to no limit hold'em because, a lot of the concepts are kind of similar.
Right. Or if you're playing against a guy that
Yeah.
just under bluffs, right? You don't see bet because then you can just fold if they
Right.
bet the
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah.
You just your strategy is a lot more dynamic based on all the scenarios, and so like you're not just kind of like stuffed into this one size fits all action on the flop. You have a lot of options based on who you are,
Yeah.
what you want to accomplish, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, sorry for the segue
Yeah, no
into
problem.
poker
We can
strategy,
we can
but
do tangents, no problem. Yeah. So just
um,
kind of, if you want to jump, should I jump back into kind of
sure,
my
jump
story
back into
or
the story. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
okay? And then fast forward to like 2010, 2011. Um, I was good friends with Daniel Negreanu by that time, and he was like he was saying, oh, you should consider maybe joining PokerStars as ambassador. I was like, I never even thought about it. I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool, but like, how do what would I need to do that? That sounds pretty exciting. And he's like, you got to win something else. You got to win, like in those days, like it was like important to just like show that you're like always winning.
Sure.
Um, and he said that, and then like shortly thereafter, PCA announced that they're going to hold the largest tournament of the time, and it was like the first 100K ever at the
Ooh.
in Bahamas.
Hmm.
And I was having a good year at that time, and I was like, all right, I'll play it. I took a big piece of myself, and I was like, I'll play it. So I registered for the event. I don't, maybe it got 30 something players. I don't remember. It wasn't like particularly huge. But I ended up
Not a lot
making the
of people
final tape.
walking around with 100K in
Yeah,
their pocket
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
bet.
Especially it was like the first type, the first event like
Yeah.
that. And I
Hmm.
make the final table, and at the final table with me is first of all Nick Schulman and Daniel Negreanu. So both of them at the final table,
Yeah.
and then I actually end up going heads up versus Daniel Negreanu. So it was literally like straight out of a movie. It was like it's almost like too crazy. And I end up beating Daniel heads up, and he was really really happy for me, and and he's like, well, like this is like just a story right out of the movie. Like you're definitely gonna get, they're gonna sign you for sure. And
Hmm.
and sure enough, like maybe like a week later, I started talks, and 2 months later they signed me. and I became an ambassador.
How did that
And
feel
I,
being a
yeah,
PokerStars pro?
that was kind of cool. I mean, it was a very different thing for me because I also realized I kind of have to be a much more public person. I mean, I was
Yes.
already kind of known in the poker world, but I realized I kind of have to be even more public. I mean, I'm an introvert at heart, like a pretty big
Same.
introvert. So it was,
Hmm.
but I figured like whatever. It's just a thing I'll get used to. No big deal. And I wanted to kind of try things out. I wanted to continue traveling, and see what that's like. And also, obviously, having a contract is nice because you're kind of getting an additional income source that's kind of guaranteed.
Yeah.
Um, so I joined. They asked me to represent Ukraine because I was born in Ukraine, even though I grew up in the U.S. They wanted me to represent Ukraine. So I had to spend like about a month and a half out of the year in Ukraine, just like doing for media type things. And being a pro, like the biggest difference was like I had to travel to all the EPTs. Basically I shifted my focus from half cash, half tournaments to almost exclusively tournaments. So I would say that's the biggest difference.
How
And
did
I
that
stayed with
feel?
them for. I liked it. I mean I
Yeah.
loved all forms of poker. I enjoyed competing at that time. I was like I it was really important for me. Like I wanted to like become number one, and I became number one player in the world. With Bluff magazine in 2011. Like that was really like that was. Uh, like I don't know. I kind of like wanted to win trophies, win tournaments, and
I feel like
things like
that
that.
feeling is probably better than becoming a PokerStars pro. No offense to PokerStars, but like being the number one player in the world, I think that's something that just all competitors want to achieve in whatever endeavor or field that they're competing in, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely there's something to it. Um, and yeah, so I kind of once I achieved that, like 2011 was a huge year for me. I had a lot of success, and I would say that that's actually the year that where my kind of optimism took like a back turn, a bad turn because it made me overconfident in my abilities. Like I just felt like I was like on top of the game. I was like
Sure.
so good. Nobody can beat me. I was just like everything was going my way,
You turned into
And
Phil
then
Hellmuth overnight.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then 2012 was like basically 2012 and 2013 were like really like harsh for me. Like they were really bad years. They were like punishing years for me. Things were just not working out. And but then they forced me to kind of regroup and understand that I can't just like lay back and think I'm a pro. I can do anything I want. I actually have to continue working on my game. I have to see how people are now changing their game, how the game is changing, and I can't fall behind if I want to stay on top of it.
Was there any effect because that's like the most painful years of professional players' lives. I think 2011, 2012, 2013. Black Friday was 2011, right?
Hmm.
Did that
Hmm.
have a significant impact just on everything that you were experiencing at the time? How was that felt by you?
Uh, I guess it probably played a role as to why I stopped playing cash games. I mean, because I lived in New York at the time, and I remember when Black Friday happened, I was like sitting playing a mixed game online
Mm,
on PokerStars, and then it's like everything froze, and then I got a call from my team PokerStars manager that like things are closing down. I couldn't believe it, and I was like, all right, so I guess that played a role because I couldn't play from the U.S. anymore.
sure.
Um, so I just, it had an impact, but it wasn't like super like bad for me. It wasn't like it wasn't like for the people who played full time online because I
Yeah.
never actually did that.
Gotcha.
So I would just,
Gotcha.
I
So
just continued to
you didn't
travel, and
change
then
it.
if there were big online series, I would just go to Canada or Mexico or Europe somewhere, and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So 2012, 2013, you were struggling to get back on top and realizing that can't just show up for work and print the monies
Yeah,
and stay on number one. You got to stay hungry and actually still do practice and think and just
yeah,
do everything at a high level every single second of every single day.
definitely, yeah. So that's when I started to kind of really start, you know, focusing on the game, trying to kind of learn it, trying to kind of catch up. Um, And I did that. I was pretty happy with where my game was, like in towards 2014, 2015. But then like the game was really like the tools that I think like the first solvers were coming out, like the first training courses were coming out. Um, and at the time, I was already kind of becoming more interested. I always had this fantasy of like starting a business, and I had this like thought like, where do I want to be in 10 years or in 20 years? Like when I'm 50 or 60, do I want to be a professional poker player? And I was like, I really did not want to do that. I was like, I
How
love
come?
poker, but like, I probably, to some degree, I had a fear in me that because I've seen so many professional poker players who like went busto, who on TV, were like all these, had all this success, but in reality, I knew that they were busto.
Yeah,
Um, and I always had this fear that would happen to me, and I was like, man, if what if I end up like 60 and like poker is all I know, and like, and I can't keep up with like the young kids, like that's just not a
sure.
place I wanted to be in.
Yeah,
So I thought I better leave while I'm still, kind of, while I'm still doing well financially, and like I can do other things and learn and capable of learning other things. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of when I became friends with Luca, and we were both kind of big fans of esports, and we decided to launch Clash, which was basically an event organizer in esports. And at the time, we kind of had this idea of taking what we learned from PokerStars and applying that to esports, basically building a platform for people to play different games, but just like with a different, but not for money, but like with a different monetization model. And I wanted to focus on business building and that, something that I can kind of be proud of. And so yeah, so that was kind of where I started to focus on from 2016 on.
nice. Why esports organization, right? Because there are so many different businesses that you could have started. That one just seems like really interesting to me, especially from like a logistical standpoint. It seems uh, potentially complex, or it feels like it could be complex. So tell me about why esports organizing these events was a thing that, yeah, sucked you in.
So I was a fan of games for a long time, even before poker. Like I was playing like Warcraft 2. I remember like hardcore. Like I was always a gamer. I always like different types of games. And I remember maybe it was like 2010 or 2011. I was or 2012. I think it was actually rather. I was in Korea and Seoul with my good friend Elki. And maybe but he was a StarCraft 2 professional before he was a poker professional. Like in
Hmm.
2002, he was like the first non-Korean pro to actually live in Korea and be super successful in StarCraft 2. So when we came to Korea, he was super famous, and not for poker, but for StarCraft. People still remembered him. Like 10 years later, people
Oh
still
wow.
remembered him. And he took me to a StarCraft 1 event, right? And I remember I went, and I was like blown away. It was a stadium, I don't know, maybe like 5, 10,000 people or something, and it was like completely packed, and it was so much energy. And I was like, wow, it's incredible that this is like a sport for them. Like they love games, like they just absolutely love it. Um, and then I would go to a couple of events in the States. I remember I went to like a League of Legends event in the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and it was packed. And I was like, realized like this is just like growing massively. There's so much interest towards it. Um, and when Luca and I were talking, we were like, maybe we saw a lot of similarities between that and poker, like at least in terms of like what it takes to become a pro, um, and we wanted to see, we kind of believe that we can figure it out once we get into it. So we didn't exactly know what we're gonna do. We just knew we wanted to start something up, and then we'll figure it out. So we basically just like we signed a couple of different teams and a couple of different games, and we would travel with them, just kind of like network, meet people, um, basically building a brand, building a name for ourselves. And then, shortly thereafter, we figured out like that we actually wanted to uh, use teams to build a brand for ourselves, the same way as PokerStars used us as pros to build a brand for themselves in some way, right? Like, um, and then build a community around that, and then build a platform and organize events for said community.
It
And that's kind of what we started working towards.
it kind of hits me that there may be a lot of similarities in the early poker experience, traveling around, meeting some of the top players, making friends who are like building their way up and trying to make a name for themselves with esports in the same way that you were describing, right? Like traveling around to these events with these teams, networking, meeting people. Was the energy like similar in poker and the esports world where there's just like this, it's like a tangible excitement for what's coming and what they're working towards and what's happening in kind of all of their lives.
Yeah, it's a good question. Honestly, like what we actually know, the energy levels were similar, but it felt like esports was a little bit like less advanced than poker. It was like the moneymaker years of esports. That's what it felt like. It was just
Yeah,
booming, but it was way bigger than poker. That was another
yeah,
thing that made it kind of exciting. And the other thing was like we realized that we were curious how the esports world would treat the poker us as poker players, right? Like coming into it, and it was like we realized that it's like they see poker as just another game. So it's like
sure.
it's like
Which
it's
it
like
is.
cousin industries, which it is,
Right.
right? Like even um, so in that sense, we were kind of accepted well, and yeah, I mean the energy levels were high. We just felt like we were kind of getting on the at the ground floor, kind of at the ground floor, I guess is the phrase, like during the moneymaker years, but in esports. That's kind of the
Sure.
way it felt at the time.
Yeah, and a massive industry. I mean, I'm again like dating myself, but like I remember when before Twitch there was Justin.tv and then they transitioned into
Right.
Twitch and then like Twitch just kind of blew up and became this like gigantic massive platform and now you have like YouTube and I guess there's another platform that I think like Kick
Kick,
or Rumble
kick,
Kick
yeah, yeah,
Kick is
yeah.
the one. Yeah,
Kick,
so
yeah, yeah.
it just became like this giant industry in the States, but apparently was already big in Korea. Like they were just like a decade and a half or
Exactly.
ahead of the US.
Yeah, yeah. They were ahead. But we also like looking at statistics. We also saw that young kids everywhere were starting to pick up on it, and like especially like mobile esports, where you have easier access. You don't need a computer. A
Yep.
lot of people can't afford a computer, but most people have a phone. Most kids have a
Yep.
phone, so those games were blowing up also. Um, and I remember like there were also like very interesting statistics in terms of the way sports are viewed, and we saw like a difference within 15 years. Like all the age groups of sport fans like drastically rose just in 15 years. And basically
Oh wow.
what that meant is like, well, because kids are watching esports, not sports. So I was like, this is the future. This is what this is what kids are. So it's like if you build something for them now, 10, 15 years in the future, they're going to be young adults and kind of customers for life. It's a cute cat.
Yeah, thank you. He may look cute, but we're watching him for a year while our friend is in Japan, and
Oh wow. Okay.
he he's a battler, man. He fights all our other cats, so I have to lock him in here with me. No matter what, even when I'm doing making content with Eugene Katchalov.
As long as he's not battling you, so that's all
No,
right.
he's like that's how he sucked us in. We met him and he was the sweetest cat, like the nicest. It's like, oh yeah, of course we'll watch him for a year, and then all of a sudden he turns into a demon around any other cat. He's just super aggressive. Um,
It's funny.
but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, kids love video games, right? I
Yeah.
can't I can't imagine how I would have felt as a teenager, right? Like I think the thing that I dreamt about was like being able to play Mortal Kombat 2 online
Yeah.
versus my friends. Like that would have been like the
Yeah.
dream for me. I had to invite them to
Incredible.
my
Yeah.
house and play like Mortal Kombat on one TV, one console. And of course my kids, they love the iPad, they love games and Minecraft and Roblox and yeah, it makes a lot of sense that e-gaming has become what it has. And
Yeah. And
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, like I would say, like the biggest problem that we saw in the industry, which was like kind of obvious, it was like there was this huge audience of like hundreds of millions of people that were fans of esports, but no one figured out a great way to monetize it. Right? It's like that was the biggest issue. The only people that were really making money, the only companies that were making money were the actual the game makers, basically the companies that actually built the
Developers.
games.
Yeah.
Developers, yeah. No, so it was like we saw this opportunity and like also, how can we monetize this huge, massive audience?
What'd you
The
do?
way maybe some sports that.
What was the y'all's solution?
Well, the solution was to actually, we thought to build a platform to organize events and many different games for our community for basically our community that follows us both for our pros and for our event organization, and then we sell access to them to other advertisers, I guess, or whatever. Basically, make sponsorship deals with businesses who
Sure.
want access to this young generation. Because if you're a big business and you don't have a good way to reach a young adult, because they don't watch television, they don't watch sports, we thought we'd be a good option for that. And then
And there
eventually
was a
we wanted
market.
to, yeah, and there was a market, and then eventually we wanted to kind of expand that business model into more B2C as well, and kind of start creating really building out the platform in terms of like things like skins and uh, other kinds of activities. Like the one thing that always excited me was like if you look at a game like Fortnite, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right?
Yep.
Um, like their monetization model, like it's a completely free game, and the only thing they do is they sell skins, which have absolutely zero impact on the actual gameplay. And then I saw that through selling these skins, they make 300 million a month,
That's
and
okay.
that was like mind blowing to me. I was like, all right, so what's like, what's at the base level here? Why is this? Why is everyone buying skins in this? And I think the most important thing, the most important feature was that kids loved spending time playing the game, and it was basically like a place for them to hang out online, in these Fortnite servers. So obviously, when you're hanging out somewhere for a long time, the same things as we do as humans in real life, like buy expensive clothing or
Clothes. Yep.
find ways to show off, like start playing these status games. The same thing happens online with kids. They want who has the coolest costume, who has the coolest skin, and they're willing to pay money for that. So we realized it was just like the real world moving into online world, and this was the way for kids to show off. They didn't want maybe cool new sneakers, but they would want like a cool new skin for their Fortnite
Yep.
character. So that's kind of what I wanted, what we wanted to build in our platform. Basically, a cool place for people to hang out in, play events, and the more time they can spend hanging out there, then we can kind of start monetizing in similar ways, offer them ways to stand out from one another. So that was kind of
And
like the big idea.
how has Clash done over time? How has your business grown? How's it doing?
We struggled a lot actually because we were always because it's not it was never like a profit generating business for a long time.
Hmm.
So because of that, we constantly had to raise money, and so basically, like whenever we raise money, we could never raise like a huge amount like at any one time. So it's like we were always, and then like COVID hit, that kind of hurt us, and we could never get it to a place we wanted to. It was something that was like always holding us back. So things kind of really delayed, and then after COVID was over, esports, the industry itself actually like entered its like second winter. So
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and it's like it's been rough for a lot of companies. So I mean we're still doing fine. Like we're still there, we're still building, but just not as fast as we would want. Not
Sure.
and I haven't been operationally involved in the company for a couple of years. Like my partner Lucas taking care of it for the most part. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're still kind of moving forward. It's just kind of slower than we'd like. Uh,
Such is the way of pretty much everything I've experienced in life. That
exactly. Yeah.
um, unless you're Antonio Esfandiari, in which case your bankroll building goes much
Yeah.
faster than
Go
you
win a tournament.
than you
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how has it felt? Kind of scratching that itch of business building after leaving the world of poker. How has that experience felt for you?
Uh, it's tough. Like I remember another thing that gave me that itch was like, through poker, like the greatest thing about poker was like the network that I was able to build, like the kind of people that I met from, very famous people from Silicon Valley,
Sure.
and then I always had this dream of like, like building a startup, and I started reading all these books. And but then it's only after you actually start experiencing it yourself, like actually like being involved in the business, you realize how gruelingly difficult it is to build something, especially a startup, especially like not just like copying some business, but just kind of creating it as you go along, like really inventing new things as you go along. It's really, really difficult. Then you realize why so many people fail, so many businesses fail. It was like 98% failure rate or something, like something huge. It's grueling. It's very, very hard. It takes, and then like it gives you a new appreciation for the people that really kind of get beyond it and really make it. Um,
Yes.
that have that kind of willpower. So it's really hard. Um, but so I would say, I don't know, like if you kind of feel that inside of you, like you can go for it, but just like be clear with your expectations. Like,
Yeah.
you need to have like a high pain threshold
Yes.
to withstand
Many
those types of
many
things.
nights laying in bed, curled into a ball, asking like,
Yeah,
why can't somebody just give me the answers? Why can't somebody just tell me what I'm
yeah,
supposed to do? Like this is as somebody that's owned his own business for the past 5 years and just started from ground zero and nothing. It is exceptionally difficult, like
yeah.
exceptional. There are challenges that you could never foresee happening that happen that you have to deal with, and you have no choice. Like you just have to deal with them. And yeah, it's I think it just goes to show that like in poker we deal with downswings, we deal with self-doubt, we deal with confidence issues. um we feel like we forget, like did I just forget how to do anything in this game like overnight? Did I just like lose everything that I had, like all the knowledge and experience and skill that I had gained over time? um in business it's the same. You still get
Yeah,
just punched in the stomach over and over and over and over again, and you just have to keep getting up. You have no choice.
they're very similar in that sense, and that a lot of business people who I've met, when I was playing poker, said that they actually, um, uh, they think that a lot of like the top poker players, they would actually be really good at either building businesses or trading, stuff like that, because a lot of the skills are translatable.
Resilience,
And
I think. Resilience
resilience, yeah,
is always needed in almost any endeavor, I think, as a
yeah.
human.
And like another thing I wanted to add was like, as you were speaking, it also made me appreciate, uh, like how we were saying in business, like no matter what you plan, you're always going to have surprises. It's always going to be hard, like, and things you can never possibly plan for. So it's not about how well you plan, it's about how well you adjust to the constant problems, to the constant flow of problems. So it always kind of made me remember kind of things that I read in books about building startups, that professional investors, they don't invest in an idea, they invest in people. And the reason is that, like, even the best ideas, if you don't have good execution, if you don't have the right people there, they will encounter problems and they will not make it. So you
Yep.
need to invest in people. Even with below average ideas, if you have the right person, they will figure it out. So it's like, it's really all about execution. And that just really kind of my own experience really underlined it for me, as to how important it is.
Yeah.
And it's the same it's honestly, it's kind of the same in, very similar in poker as well. You can be, it's like, how well are you going to adjust to losing? How well are like, that's what makes you a pro, I think. It's not about how how well you're doing winning, but how you adjust to
As
losing.
somebody that has invested most of his adult life in poker, and the past 5 years into teaching and helping to guide aspirational poker players' careers, I can say that I am still pretty shit at meeting someone and being like, oh, they're going to make it, or oh, they're going to fail.
Mm,
Like I am still trash at the assessment phase of poker, where it's like some people that like I brought into my Wolves program, I thought had very little chance of success and absolutely excelled. And
mm,
they just like, and even from like other players' perspective, it's like, wow, why did you sign that guy to a contract? They're kind of wacky. And then they just absolutely excel. And then people that seemingly have their shit together can speak very intelligently at a very high level theoretically about poker, very interested in how the game works, where you just think this dude is going to be a star, have flamed out and just fallen completely
Yeah.
apart. And so like it's really, I think that there is an element of natural talent and ability and critical thinking that's necessary to succeed at poker. But then there's also other intangibles like the resilience
Yeah.
aspect of it, of like, can you get up when everything's going against you? Can you still show up, do work, and play to the best of your ability? Can you keep an open mind to learning new information and making upgrades? Or do you get stubborn and bogged down into holding or clinching your past beliefs that you think are good and think are profitable? Or can you let those go so that you can adapt and adjust? And it just, I don't know. I can't meet somebody that's been in poker and is obsessed with poker and be like, oh yeah, you're going to be successful. You're not. Like I made that mistake of just like assuming a player is going to be successful. And then it all falls apart. And I'm just like dumbstruck, right? Like just scratching my head. Like what happened? How did it all go wrong? And
It's
so
just
there,
yeah, it's just there's just way too many variables to account for. Like you said, like even things like how much pressure you're under to make it. Like if you can just always drop it and go do some business or whatever. If you have some other opportunities, then you're not going to try as hard. For example, if you
sure.
don't love it. So like uh, so like
How you
what
deal
I
with
found is like
pressure.
you really have to love it. Like you really have to love poker, whether you actually need it because you have another nothing else to do,
Sure.
or you can, but you really really need to love the game, and it's only that love, that passion, that's going to drive you to um, you know even work on it when things are not going well, even when you're kind of full of doubt about everything. That's the only
Yeah.
way to
And
kind of persevere.
there's also like a very, it's like a very nuanced feeling. I think some players want to be perceived to be good at poker, and some people want to actually be good at poker. And it's really
Mm.
hard to differentiate those two a lot of the time, where like there are some people like Gus, right? You mentioned Gus earlier, and I don't know why, but at some point I was watching an old WPT or Final Table that had like Gus and Freddie Deeb, and when Gus busted Freddie Deeb, this was like Gus's like maybe first major victory. Freddie Deeb in his exit interview said something like, "I wish I could play that guy every day for the rest of my life in
Hmm.
poker. He's fucking terrible." And it just like struck me as funny, right? That like, oh, Gus, like he's doing something different that the pros of the day are shitting on. Um, and he's not afraid to do that. He's not afraid to look different. He's not afraid to look
Yeah.
silly. And I think that like that's something that you must have in poker. You have to be willing
Yeah.
to blow yourself up, look ridiculous, but trust in yourself. I was good friends with Vanessa Selbst back in the party poker days, and the first time she made a WSOP final table that was filmed, she like five bet jam, five deuce suited right into aces, like right in front of the world, and just said like, like you don't understand the context. This dude had been four betting me a ton, like, and I just thought like I just went after it, But when you see that hand, you think, oh my god, like what did she
Yeah.
do? But it's not surprising that she had as much success as she did because she was just willing to trust herself and she did not give a fuck if people thought she was good at
And think
poker.
about think about how many calls that bought her in the future.
Sure,
that
absolutely, right,
how much action that bought her in the future.
right,
So
rightfully
yeah, yeah,
so.
yeah. That's a really really good point that you made about Gus and about. I mean, you notice that has happened throughout the past 20 years in poker. Whenever someone kind of, I mean, remember like when Durr came about, or when Isildur came about, or when Jungleman came about, when they first appeared on the scene, people treated them exactly the same way as Freddie Deep treated Gus. They were like, "Oh, this is some fish. Like he doesn't know what he's doing."
Yep.
It's always like that because in poker, if you're doing what everybody expects you to do, you're never going to make it high. I mean, you can maybe grind a little bit some of the like the bad players, but you're never going to beat the other regulars. So it's like you can maybe make a couple of bucks, but you're never going to be a huge success. So you like by definition you must be doing something really unique to beat everyone. So yeah, that's a really good important point, and honestly, it's something that I struggled with actually to some degree, in my day because um, I for a long time I did have this fear of like, oh, am I going to look silly doing this or making this move? Like I was like too concerned about how I would look, and then but I was like conscious of it, and I really tried to not worry about that. But it didn't come easy for me. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
Whereas for some people, I think it just comes naturally. They just simply don't care what they're thought about. They just do what they think is right, and that's it.
Yeah, they have no fear of ridicule
Yeah.
by the other people at the table.
That's a great quality in poker, but it doesn't come naturally
It's
to
an
most.
well, yeah, it's an incredible quality if harnessed correctly. I think
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
terrible quality if harnessed incorrectly.
That's true. Yeah, fair enough.
Um, but yeah, as you said, if everybody understands everything you do, where's your edge come from? Like it's hard
Exactly.
to have an edge if everybody understands everything that you're going to do, every single action that you
Yeah,
take. And so, yeah, and I think it's something that in today's in this current age of poker is uh more difficult, and because of the solver era of poker, things are very people feel they're very cut and dry. And I just had Justin Saliba on the podcast, who is a high roller regular on the MTT scene, and he was telling me that like the different like I guess call them squads or groups, cliques of players all approach poker differently. Like everybody thinks that like the 25K players, the 50K players, the 100K players are like robots that all play the same. He's like they all approach poker extremely
hmm
differently, and they all approach spots extremely differently. They're not robots. Like they all come to their own strategies and have their own takes about how these things are supposed to work. And that was like really refreshing to me. It was like, wow, like
mm,
there's still room for creativity and there's still room for that sort of thing in poker. But when you get bogged down into like, this is how it must be, you're screwed because
yeah,
that leaves no room for making any kind of upgrade.
yeah. As soon as you kind of settle down and you feel like, oh, I found my way, like that's kind of like a recipe for disaster.
You're lost.
Um, yeah, and I think that's the great thing about poker that kind of style does not work. That you always have to continuously adjust to your opponents, and that the exploitative styles will be like the most profitable styles, and like whoever can play exploitatively the best, they will be the biggest winners.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And
yeah,
everything that I've seen, everything I've experienced, the data that I've analyzed, all reaches that same conclusion. Which poker, in my opinion, should be a human versus human battle of wits,
yeah,
uh, to see who's the better competitor, and that's it. Which I think segues nicely into the next topic of conversation, which is your thoughts, views on artificial intelligence, bots on the space, in the space. You've been actively talking about it, and I have to say my interest has been quite piqued in research for this conversation because as again somebody that coaches and leads a group of players, cash game players that have battled and put in significant volume against artificial intelligence bots. Um, what project are you working on right now? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to deal with this issue in the game, how to make the game better for not just pros, but for especially recreational players.
Um, so I think I'll start with like a big problem that I see in poker today.
Sure.
Yeah, on the base level, and I think because of all these solvers, because of all these tools that exist today, I think the difference between the skill level of not the skill level, but the win rate between a professional player and a recreational player is like wider than it's ever been. Like certainly wider than when I started, right? Like or like 20 years ago or whatever. Um,
Maybe.
and I
Can
th-
I can
okay,
I sort of speak to the premise, I would say, I guess poker's kind of matured over time, right? Like strategies
Hmm.
have kind of evolved, and I would, if it's somebody brand new that I guess shows up at the casino for the first time that hasn't ever really been introduced to poker, like your friend's dad, for instance, right?
Hmm.
Your friend's dad, when he sat down at Commerce to play the 10-20 pot limit, um, if he were to sit down now in today's day and age, having never heard of poker at all, or like very minimal experience, then yes, I think the pros win rate would be just significantly higher
Right.
than they were back
Right.
then. What I don't know is how much education, or how the access of learning for anyone very, very quickly affects that dynamic. Does anyone actually show up to the poker table these days having zero experience watching, thinking about poker? That's the part
Yeah.
that I don't know anything about.
No, no, no. You're right in that, in the sense that if someone actually wants to learn poker, with the amount of tools that are available today, you can very quickly become a pretty reasonable average player, right? Like very quickly. But that still takes some time, and then it requires a certain type of person with a certain type of interest, for poker. I'm talking about pure recreational players. Like if you're talking about a player who's in the casino and they're deciding, am I going to play blackjack? Am I going to play roulette? Or maybe I'll just go play, this game poker. And all they
Okay,
know is like they learn the rules, whether it's blackjack or poker, and they're like, well, what am I going to play? And then if they sit down, or the same thing online, right? Like if they sit down at the blackjack table or roulette table or a poker table, I
sure,
think they're if we're talking about online, their quote unquote $100 deposit is going to last them much less now than it did 15, 20 years ago. And
absolutely.
if 15, 20 years ago, an argument could have been made that you'll get more bang for your buck in poker. You can actually enjoy yourself in poker more. Like you'll just lose it quicker in blackjack. I don't think that argument can be made today. I actually think if you're coming home from work and you just want to like gamble a little bit and just have fun, you'll probably get more bang for your buck playing roulette or playing slots than you would, sitting at a poker table if
Or
you're not
sports
interested
betting.
in learning poker or sport betting. Exactly. If you just want to like, click buttons and just play the rules, you don't want actually, you're not interested enough to go out and learn, because you're not trying to make pro, you're just trying to relax.
Yeah,
So,
in
uh,
that case, yeah, I absolutely agree. Like the edge is way
right.
bigger not today than it was back then.
Yeah. And yet those are the people that are most important to the poker ecosystem because those are the people that bring in new money. Right? Like without them, the poker ecosystem falls apart because like where's the
Sure.
money going to come from? Right? Like
Right.
those are the people.
You need pros.
So,
You need
um,
players.
yeah. So it's like my fear is like, okay, well, if the way the poker ecosystem is today, if it's like just mathematically, if it's driving away interest from new recreational players who don't want to take poker seriously, who just want to like relax, then what is the future of poker, right? Like how is poker going to thrive if you don't have these players? And I realized that that really well also these edges are the reason why you have bots appearing because there's just too much incentive for people to squeeze out as much money as possible from
I,
the ecosystem.
I I will say one thing about the vloggers and the content
Hmm.
creators of today. I do think they do an excellent job of driving in new people who are interested in
That's
poker,
true.
like
Yeah.
from YouTube. I think they, those kind of content creators that have the giant audiences. I think they are in some ways keeping poker alive, by exposing people and getting them interested in the game, and driving them to try it out in the first place. But yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you. And there will always be some subset of new players coming in and playing. But I think it could be you know, is there a way to drive huge amounts of people to the game, like the same way as people play casinos, casino games? How do you bring those people to also consider poker? And I
sure.
think the only real way to do that is to kind of rebalance the edge, the edge that professionals have to kind of lower it again. I mean, they should have some edge, but not so much to where they're completely destroying the recreational players. It's like the same reason why if you spin a slot, um, in in offline casinos, I think the slots typically return around 90% of whatever they take in, right? Like, and if you think about it, like, why don't they return 70% or 60%? And the reason is because people wouldn't play them. Like, you need to actually, like,
They need to have a chance to win.
you need to have some chance and have some fun. So it's the same thing in poker. Like, you need to have a chance. Like, if the edge becomes too big, like, people are just not going to play. Like, I'm not going to play you if you're just going to absolutely crush me every time I play. Like, I have to win, a fair share amount of time, my fair share, at least a little bit, for me to come back and play. So I think edges have to be lowered a little bit. And the way you approach that, like, certainly, I mean, you can create a new game, but I don't think there's much interest in creating a new game. Like, because people love playing Hold'em, people love playing Omaha. So, but you already kind of see what sites have done. They've created, like, these, like, spin and goes and, like, these fast track kind of styles that have more gamble in them, have less edge, but they're still fun and they're still kind of the same game.
Yeah.
And I think, and then, like, you see things like bomb pots that have appeared, or another one that I saw, which I thought was really, really cool. I was watching, like, the Triton Cash Game stream, and they were playing that Squid Game. You know what that is?
I don't. I have no idea. I saw it on your Twitter feed, but I didn't see the rules or
So
take the time to learn the rules.
It's fascinating. I never played it, but when I watched it, so basically what it is in the cash game, there are these, like, if it's an 8-handed table, there are these 8 little squids, and every time someone wins a pot, he also gets a squid with this pot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then basically once all the 8 squids run out, so, like, basically at the table, once everybody wins pots, whoever has not won a squid owes a penalty to everyone who has won a squid. And the more squids you've won, you're owed more. There's, like, a multiplier in it as well. So basically, and then let's say it's like 3 big blinds or 5 big blinds, but, like, basically you can adjust it, and it was high enough to the point where it completely changed the dynamics of the game. Like, things like limping started to happen much more, because, like, and then, like, let's say, like, me and you are the only ones on the table who have left, who need to win a pot. Like, imagine how crazy we might go against one another, and then, like, how other players can adjust to that. It just really changes the dynamics of the game, the ranges, to a degree that's not solved. Like, that, I don't know if you can solve. It's just, like, a huge new variable to the game. Right. And when I saw that, I was like fascinated by it, because I was like, wow, this is what I love poker. Like, when there is no solver, there is no perfect solution. You just see everyone kind of trying their best to adjust to the dynamics, to whatever you can. This is, like, the kind of poker that I love. And I think this is the kind of things that recreational players would like too, because, we're kind of, everyone's in the same boat. No one really, knows exactly what to do. So I think
I agree with you. At least on the one point, I can't speak to the recreationals, because it seems like they enjoy, like, it seems like Squid Game's kind of a variation of, like, the stand-up game that people play, where, like, you sit down when you win a pot. But I mean, from the pro perspective, I love bomb pots. I love different variations. As somebody that has played 6-max cash games, Hold'em for millions of hands, give me some kind of fucking break in, like, the structure of how the game works. That's something I very much
and another thing that I always remembered was, like, even when I was playing in Bobby's room, when I was playing the mixed games, if you ever watch that game, you'll notice that, amongst the many games they have, they'll often play, like, PLO flips, like, literally just flips.
Yeah.
Or they will do side bets, right? Like, complete side bets that have props, right? Yeah, props that have no edge. And then it's like, well, are they just pure gambling, or what's, like, because there's no edge? But then if you think about it deeper, there is a reason. There's a really good reason. And the reason is because everyone handles losing differently. And then when you get someone stuck in props, or in just, like, they will play poker very differently. and that's when kind of poker becomes fun again, because someone's like on tilt from props. Someone it completely changes the game. So it kind of forces emotions into the game,
Yeah.
emotional reactions into
It,
the game. So I think that's another thing poker needs is like how do you destabilize pros, like to get them to be more emotional, to get more
sure.
variance into the game, because at least that'll bring their edge down and make it more fun for recreationals again. So
And if we're no, I think that's great. And thinking about like the like technical side of it too, if you and I are placing bets, like poker's a game of placing bets that have edges, right? Just like
Mhm,
an accumulation of those.
mhm.
And generally speaking, the pro wants to have an edge with every bet that they make, whether it be through a call or raise, placing a bet. Um, and the more like 50-50 bets that you can kind of throw in there, it kind of dilutes the edge over
Hmm.
time, where it's like I
Right.
place 50 bets where like it's 70-30, but then I place 50 more that are 50-50, and then the
Yeah.
accumulation of 100, it kind of shrinks the edge a little bit back to the middle.
And it raises the volatility, right? Like
Sure,
the
yeah.
so
It's a reason why I don't love running it multiple times. Like running a board multiple
mm,
times when I'm playing,
yeah.
because like yes, it reduces variance, but if I believe in myself to handle the volatility better than my opponents, then I'm giving up edge by running it twice. Because like if I can lose five in a row, five all ins and be okay, but they lose five and they lose their fucking minds, then yes, I want more volatility, right? I want more
That's
variance.
exactly
I would
right.
rather run
Yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
because if your opponents are on the wrong side of the volatility, they're gonna play worse. So your edge goes up essentially versus them, because as they're
Yeah,
trying to get even. So you
exactly.
want
Yeah.
that. But whereas if you feel like your game's not gonna change if you lose it, if your bankroll can withstand it, then it's okay. So
Yeah.
what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Uh, and
So with this in mind, what's you're launching a product in a couple of months. Is it okay to talk about the product? And in my research, you
I
had
mean, it's
I
it's
didn't see what it was yet, but
yeah. I mean, we're gonna announce it in a couple of months. It's just more. It's more along these lines. Like how do you decrease the pro's edge, and then how do you make the game more appealing to recreational players? So you can drive recreational players. How do you so that rather than always playing in the casino, for example, they can also sometimes still have fun playing poker. So like, how do you make poker more fun for regular gamblers? Um,
and me
and
too.
I think
I want to throw myself in there. I want it to be more fun for me too. Sorry to interrupt one more time, but I want to go like
yeah,
way
yeah,
back in
yeah.
time to like Ultimate Bet and like back to kind of the glory days of online poker where innovation was happening very rapidly, right? Like they would play they had like deuce seven off tables on Ultimate Bet at the
Mm,
cash games where everybody had a bounty over their head. You win a pot with seven deuce, you win the bounty from everyone. Like, and that kind of thing has like went away over time, and like
yeah,
it always struck me as like the most fun
yeah,
adding in all these variables. I'm not sure if I have an edge, but I'm having more fun playing, and ultimately
yeah,
that's
exactly.
what I want to have,
Because
right?
it's not so mechanical. It's not so
Right.
mechanical. It's like you're always thinking about the game. Whereas if you're just playing mechanically, you're kind of like you're playing on autopilot a lot, and that
Right.
kind of gets boring.
But button
But you
open,
can't
right?
play on
Like
autopilot.
small
Yeah,
blind
it's
three
like,
bet range
okay,
first button.
well,
Like I've done this a
yeah, it's
billion
this or
times.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, or like you see bet this much on this type of boards. It's just easy. But
Yeah.
but when you have these like little nuances that really change the dynamics, that's when it gets really really interesting.
Hmm.
So I think those are the types of things I'd like to bring in, into poker, is like not necessarily changing the game, but more changing things around the game that'll make it more fun. Um, whether it's technical things, whether it's these like side bets, whether it's things that can drive people to emotionally destabilize or whatever,
Sure.
so things that recreational players will find fun, and will make it interesting for them to come sit down and play.
I
You
have
know,
so many ideas as an operator. Like it's just so like
mm,
just give us the option to like bet red or black against each other, right? Like just any like
yeah, exactly.
why does that not exist on a platform where like I just say I
Or
want to bet red or
yeah,
black and like and I think I get from the operator standpoint that like they probably shouldn't take juice, which kind of like hurts the 50-50 bet between the players. But like, man, like let us have fun. Let the people
Yeah, it's
playing
like
poker have more fun.
let me put it another way. Another way I like to put it, like if think about it from the perspective, if you think about a live game of poker from a purely, let's say someone sits down to play poker for the first time, someone who plays casino now sits down to play poker. Like, what would you say the biggest difference is for them, when compared to other casino games, when they sit down to play like a nine-handed game of a cash game?
Well, the complexity is a lot different, I think.
The
It's
complexity for sure, but
yeah,
like the thing that um, the biggest difference that I see, what I think makes poker boring for recreational players who are not interested in the game
lack
itself,
of
is
action. It
that
has less action too.
yeah, there's less of an adrenaline rush in
Mm,
poker,
yeah,
most of the time. Unless you're involved in a hand, unless you're involved in a big pot, most of the time you're just folding, right? Like you're sitting there, you're folding. That doesn't exist in blackjack. That doesn't exist in slots. It doesn't exist in any other casino game because there's always action. There's always adrenaline, right? In
hmm
poker, it's much slower. So you really have to love the game. You really have to appreciate the game to be, to sit there and wait for a hand to be able to play, right, for your turn. But
sure.
I think that could be a problem for inviting these recreational players.
It's a
So
problem for me as a professional. I want to play every single
yeah.
hand. Like
So
ideally, I would want to play every hand.
that goes along with exactly what you said. Is like, why not give us an opportunity to bet red or black, or just like, let's bet on the flop. Is the flop going to be black or red? Like,
Yeah,
just something. So even if me and you are not involved in the pot, like, we can at least have some side bets going on while the game's going.
yeah.
So, I think these are the things that could really drive interest to the game, while not inherently changing the rules of poker, or the rules of the game that we love, and perhaps draw in many more new players to get introduced to the game and to learn and love the game. So
I love it. I mean, I'm not
yeah,
exactly sure like what the end product's going to be, but I love the direction, and I think it makes a lot of sense and
yeah,
sounds a lot of fun and exciting for the industry. And as a note for those who play live poker, I think it's really important, and it's something that I never thought about it in these terms. Actually, I think I thought about it when I played live poker in terms of me being a degen and liking action
yeah, yeah,
every
yeah.
hand. But like, I would always want to do side bets with whoever, like on whatever, like red or
That's
black. Like
cool.
I've got sevens, you have eights. A seven hits the board, I owe you X. Two sevens hit the
Yeah,
board, like three sevens, whatever it is. You want to bet on the sports game on TV? Like let's take a
yeah,
no vig bet, just 1-to-1, just to give us a sweat, right? Because I think it took me a long time to realize that's what people go to the casino for. They go to the casino for the sweat. That moment when they put their bet and they don't know if they've won or lost, and they're kind of seeing the results, and that kind of action, that sweat. You press the button on the slot machine and you see if you won or not, right? Like that's exciting for people. And so like injecting more of the sweat in poker, I think makes a lot of sense for making
yeah,
it more fun, more engaging for not
yeah,
just new players, but really for the pros as well, I think.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's the only way. I mean, some pros can be against it potentially because they want to have huge edges, but they don't. They're not thinking long term that there's not going to be anybody to play against, because who's going to play with them if they have too big of an edge?
Yeah,
So I think it's almost like it needs to happen one way or another. Um,
I
yeah.
agree.
So yeah.
Cool. When are more details going to be coming out about whatever
Well,
direction
I think
you end up
we're
going?
we're go- we're going to be launching in a couple of months, so I'll talk about it more when we launch. Um, so yeah, I don't know. We'll
I'm
see. It's
excited.
pretty exciting. Yeah, thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
personally excited about whatever it is that you come up with.
And for now, like, that's one of the reasons, kind of coming back to where we started, like me coming back to poker is like, that uh, I want to kind of show my face a bit more because I've been away for a while. So that's why I went to Cyprus. I played the EPT there. I'm most likely going to be in Vegas to play the World Poker Tour, in December, and probably like the World Series for some events. For one, just because I miss poker, but also I want to create content. I especially want to create content for recreational players because certainly I'm not creating content, educational content. There's plenty of that. Like, I more want to show like the side of the game that can attract brand new players, not help you become pro. Like, first of all, there's way too much content already that's like that, and I couldn't do it anyways because I'm not there right now. So I just want to kind of show people what made the game interesting for me in the first place.
But before we break, how do you feel about the game after coming back after a hiatus and just actually like playing the game against the current generation of players? How does it feel compared to when you left?
Well, when I played in Cyprus, it was I played a 2K side event, then I played the 5K main event, and it didn't change too much. I mean, certainly like players are doing some new things that maybe that they didn't do 5 or 6 years ago. Uh, but for the most part, like there's still a lot of recreational players. They're still kind of doing the same things, and a lot of the moves that I remember are still kind of working. And I was certainly rusty for sure. I was rusty, but it was a lot of fun. It was honestly it was a lot of fun. And after not playing for a long time, it was fun. It was fun to be back.
Good. That's
And
good
in
to hear.
action. I don't see myself competing in like super high rollers or anything anytime soon because that's also not my point. I don't pretend that I can compete, against those players. I more want to play the tournaments that normal new recreational players might want to hop in and play. So I
Sure.
think,
And
and that's where you can do more exploitative things easier. You know.
and to be fair, I think live poker is still growing. It's still like kind
Yeah.
of kind of in a boom phase. The
Uh,
guarantees, the fields are bigger than ever before. Like, um, it's really nice to see like playing. I play very few tournaments, but the ones that I do play, just seeing like $1 million guaranteed, and then 2.5 hit 2.5 million, and 2K entrance into a 2K tournament with a lot of new people, recreationals, just
yeah.
kind of everywhere. So that's good to see that like the live poker feels healthy um, in today's
I,
day and age. The live tournament
I
scene.
agree, Brad. I'm very optimistic on offline poker. I'm pessimistic on online poker in its current form, right? Like for the reasons that we spoke about today, like with the bots. Like we haven't spoken about that too much, but like that's a huge problem. Um,
Massive, yeah.
so I think that online poker needs to evolve, needs to change in order to for me, at least for me to be optimistic about it.
And
Offline poker is quite different because there's no bots, obviously, in offline poker. So in that sense, it's really really healthy.
yeah, unless you play against Jonathan Tamayo. No, just kidding.
But there's only so many Jonathan Tamayo, so
um, no, yeah, I think as somebody that is like very much embedded in the space, I could say that making it an online poker these days is exceptionally difficult, even with
yeah.
incredible resources, incredible training. It isn't like it was back in the early days, and not so much that it's just the bots. The environment has changed. I think you spoke about PokerStars, right, and how PokerStars kind of built their business by signing pros, and the pros helped grow the game and stuff. That back in 2013 or 2014, there was this like kind of fuck the pros type movement where the
Yeah, yeah,
backlash
yeah.
like came against the pros, and it feels like the industry's kind of gotten away from highlighting professional poker players, or in a lot of ways caring about the poker dream and the aspirational poker player, which I think really harms online poker specifically. Like there needs to be the dream that like, oh wow, there's this cool thing and I can play it and I can make it. But
A big reason for that. Uh, can you hear me, Brad? I think I lost you.
yeah, we froze for a second.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I was gonna say, a big reason for that was actually when Black Friday happened, right? And Isai Scheinberg was forced to sell PokerStars, right? Like,
I know.
remember when was
Yep.
that? Maybe 2012 or whatever.
Hmm.
But like, if you think about it, Isai was the founder of PokerStars. He made billions and billions of dollars, and he was a true fan of poker. So for him, um, he remember how great like even the PokerStars events were. Like, they were giving away so much merchandise. Like, they were spending a lot of money on their players. Like, because he was a fan of poker, for him the bottom line, he made enough money. Like, it didn't matter if he made 100 million less in a year. Like, just to,
Yes.
to satisfy some poker players. Whereas once he sold the company, now the company is owned by a new buyer. It was a public company that has to now make quarterly earnings. They like they have to kind of squeeze the profit out of it. So they're more concerned with saving every buck, and it just the dynamics change completely. And I think
Yeah.
that
And,
that, that was the main reason for that. I think.
yeah, and interestingly, I think it actually hurt their bottom line over time. The
Yeah,
whole Supernova Elite thing that they took away from everybody, like it was like around December when they said they weren't going to renew the Supernova Elite, and people have been playing all
yeah,
year for Supernova Elite, and then just got absolutely smashed
yeah. It was
like
messed up. Yeah,
overnight.
yeah,
That was a lot of there's a lot of blowback from it. Saved them money short term, but I don't think it did them many favors long term. And if you Full Tilt, I remember when Full Tilt was nothing. It was a very small platform. And then because it had, Gus and all the pros and Phil Ivey, it became big. Play with the pros, right? That was their tagline. And then when GG Poker, that I had never heard of before, ever, when Daniel signed with GG Poker, it was like, what are you
it
doing? Like, I
was.
don't,
What the
what
hell
is
is that? Yeah, who are
what
these
is
guys?
GG?
Yeah,
I've never heard of GG Poker. And now they're one of the
yeah,
industry leaders, in large part because they signed an ambassador like Daniel. Um, it shows that like the aspirational, the dream, the pros, they have a place, and highlighting them is the one proven method over time that has helped grow these platforms' businesses. Highlighting these guys,
yeah.
and yeah, I think maybe those dynamics can change if poker becomes regulated or legalized in the majority of U.S. states, and there's more innovation and competition for growth. But I think like right now, we're in this like kind of dark ages of online poker specifically,
Right.
whereas live poker is just crushing it. It is just absolutely
Yeah,
crushing it.
yeah. I agree.
But man, it's been great having you on the show. Great getting to know you better. Really appreciate your time and energy, and I think your takes on all the things are spot on about what we need to inject more fun into poker. I think that's the thing that like more fun, more action,
Yeah.
better environment overall.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, just more excitement. Yeah.
Before we break, and I would love to have you on for round two. I know I did my classic thing of I kind of only asked you one question about your poker journey, and then, believe it or not, I have a bunch of other questions that I almost never ask because I never make it that far. Um, where can the Chasing Poker Greatness audience learn more about you and what you're trying to do for the industry?
I think for now, just follow my social media. I guess my Instagram and my X account, eKatchalov on both. I've kind of become much more active there, recently. So just follow me there, and I'll kind of post news. You can always contact me, and I'll kind of post news once I have them.
Perfect, man. Really looking forward to the announcement and seeing what you've cooked up. Everybody check out Eugene Katchalov, just one of the original OGs in the poker
Yeah.
space. Um,
Thank you, Brad. It's been a
thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah, same.
This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson. Coach Brad approved. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.